Hello, welcome to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Today we'll be doing some drawing with graphite. So get out your pencils, your cotton swab, kneaded eraser, have it right handy, and let's draw together. Well, thanks for being here, by the way. I always really enjoy drawing with y'all. It's a lot of fun. So you've got your number 2 pencil. This is an HB. When you talk about, drawing pencils, HB is right in the middle. It's not dark, it's not light. It's right in the middle. And then you've got this one. It's got a 6B on the end. This is our dark pencil, and we're going to use this for contrast and detail. And then you've got a cotton swab, and that's for blending and smoothing things out. And your kneaded eraser, by the way, kneaded, K-N-E-A-D-E-D, is so you can pull it apart like this. This is kind of fun. You put it in your hand and warm it up a little bit. It pulls apart a little easier. But just have that handy. We do a lot of drawing with our kneaded eraser. Alrighty, so the first thing we want to do is we want to establish where everything goes. This picture would lend itself to a horizontal format, a landscape format, or I guess with all the water and everything, we can do it portrait like this, your vertical format. I'm going to do it vertical because it fits in the window. Otherwise, you can do it however you'd like to, but draw large. Okay, so what you want to do is establish where this goes. We're going to use simple shapes. The first thing I like to do is I kind of look at my page and decide where I want that thing to go. I'm going to have it go up a little higher so it's not smack dab in the middle of the page. That's kind of boring sometimes. So I'm going to have my object a little bit higher in that third. I want it to be somewhere in this area here. And so I'm just going to very basically put in this little shape. It's about the size I want it. I'm going to have his tail touching that other edge, or just coming so close to touch that other edge. His little nose, I want a little bit of breathing space over here, so I'm going to have his little nose kind of come out this way somewhere. He's a little bottlenose dolphin. So now we've established what size we need it. Now we can kind of adjust that and say, well, that nose needs to go down a little bit further. He's got a little more arch to his back. And I'm just going to draw this until I'm happy with what I see. Did you guys notice how I was drawing with my pencil like this? This is called detail mode. We don't want to get into that quite yet. The best way to draw when you're starting out, this is what I call the layout draw, is you put your pencil down, you pick it up, you kind of hold it between your thumb and your forefinger. These other fingers, some people like to wrap these around it like this, or some people just have it floating. It's totally up to you, whatever's comfortable. But it's like you're showing your pencil to somebody. Hey, look at my pencil. And you draw with the side of your pencil like this. This is a lot faster. And there's basically 4 reasons why we do this. Number 1, it's faster. Number 2, we're not grinding the graphite into the paper. It stays superficial on the surface. So we can smear it, we can do all sorts of things. Your elbow and your shoulder draw better lines. And so it takes your hand up off the paper, and as you draw, your elbow and your shoulder do much better arcs and circles than your wrist does. So this kind of is a whole arm kind of a thing. Okay? And you get better lines this way. So I know it feels weird. That's the weird part of it. But you'll get used to it, and I guarantee you'll draw faster. You'll draw faster and better. So once you've drawn the shape that you kind of want it in, as big as you kind of want it, you can use your kneaded eraser to get rid of things. The cool thing about this is everything is sitting on the surface, and so everything erases very, very easily. His little dorsal fin is kind of right in the middle. I'm just going to put a little triangle there just to say that's where that fin goes. And a little triangle up in here, and you just kind of visually put it in, and if it's not in the right place, you can always adjust it. If you're going to adjust things, draw them in correctly first and then erase. Because if you erase now, then you lose your point of reference. So you just keep drawing until you like it, and then what you don't like, take your kneaded eraser, pinch it down to like a little knife blade, and then get rid of what you don't like. We're not going to draw hard lines around everything too. In fact, all the water and everything, I'm showing you a technique to do the water, and you'll just go, wow, that's so easy. So once you're pretty darn close and you think, okay, that's about in the right place, it's, it may be not perfect, and we can always adjust it. You can keep adjusting and adjusting until it is perfect or close to it. So once you've got what you like, and you've got it in about the shape and the position you like, a good composition is where your subject matter comes to close to 3 of the 4 edges of your paper. So here our fin is almost touching. We're close to the top, but we're going to use the water to create some of this down in here. I love those little dark shapes that go down in there, and so we'll do that with our cotton swab. But right now what we want to do is we want to add a little bit of graphite to everything that's dark. Now our whole dolphin is fairly dark. He's got a little shine somewhere up in here, right above that fin. If you go straight up from the bottom or the back side of that fin, come straight up. Somewhere up in there is a little spot of light, and you want to just keep that light. So in order to help that, I'm just going to take my pencil and very lightly, notice how far back I am on this pencil. I cannot draw heavy when I'm this far back on that pencil. So it kind of keeps me from drawing too dark. Plus I'm not going to be putting in dark edges. Just going to shade that entire shape in. And because we're not doing a line around it, we can erase anything here. Our edges are not set. If later as we're drawing we go, oh, that was in the wrong place, we can erase it and adjust it. Now what I want to do, so I've still got that spot of light that's up in there. I want to leave that little spot out. If you said, oh shoot, I forgot to put that little spot in, just take your kneaded eraser and go in and just pull out that little spot of light, because it's got to stay fairly white. There's also little spots along his back where the water is kind of shining a little bit. And if you want to, you can take your kneaded eraser and just come back in there and just pull out some of those little spots, just to remind yourself that needs to stay light. Everything else has a little bit of value to it, so a little bit of grayness to it. Now what I want to do is I want to pick out the darkest areas. And so sometimes you have to kind of squint your eyes or something to kind of pick up some of those darker areas. So I'm just going to use my pencil back in here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of pressure and just darken in some of those areas. And if there's light around them, I've got to leave that light out. And as I do, I'm going to adjust and make the shapes correct as much as I can. And again, if you think, oh, I made that too fat or whatever, just take your kneaded eraser and just pull out that edge. Isn't that nice? Isn't that easy to erase? Oh, I don't know if you're anything like me. When I was your age drawing, I put in a line and then I'd erase it, and then it was always there. And as you draw over the top of it, it comes right back, and you're like, dang it, can't I get rid of that mistake? Well, this way, you can get rid of those mistakes, and you can adjust and adjust. No dark edges. Don't put a dark line around anything yet. We're going to just let the edges take care of themselves. Drawing is kind of like a camera where you find your subject matter and then you adjust the focus. And at first it's kind of fuzzy and non-detailed, no hard contrasts. And as you focus it and focus it and focus it, it gets better and better and better. Drawing's kind of the same way. And if you think of it that way, it becomes a little more logical, a little more easier to understand. There are many, many ways to drawing and to getting exactly what you want. What I'm teaching here is the basics. kind of like when you learned how to write. Your first grade teacher or wherever you learned to write taught y'all to write the exact same way, but now all your writing is different. Well, art's kind of that way. Eventually you'll find your own voice, but right now we're just going to kind of do anything kind of the same. Now I'm just going to clean up my edges. You have to pinch your kneaded eraser all the time. So here we've got our composition, we've got our proportions, and you just kind of keep adjusting until you're happy with it. Once you're happy with it, then now we can move on and darken in some things, make it more permanent, if you will, because we're gonna grind this graphite into the surface. And so I'm going to do a little smoothing with my cotton swab. I'm going to just take my cotton swab, and just from the start, I'm just going to kind of go in and just little circles, or you could go back and forth. I'm not really doing a lot of pressure, but I am just kind of trying to blend that graphite. Oftentimes when I do guest artist programs and things for people, I get the question of, how do you make your stuff so smooth? And this is it. This is how you do it. If you start out smooth, then whatever you lay on top is going to go smooth as well. And so you kind of start out smooth, and then you layer in your graphite, more graphite. And as you do, you smooth it out. And you can make your surfaces very, very smooth and soft. Now don't forget to leave that little spot of light out. So as you're using your cotton swab to smooth things out, just leave that little spot of light. Your details, if you're a detail monkey like I am, I love detail. Love to make it look photographic. And if you like that too, this is a great way to do it. It's just kind of slowly, a little bit at a time. If you YouTube artists, sometimes they'll start with one little section and they just move out and they're detailing as they go. You could do that when you're really established and get really good and know what you're doing. But otherwise, when you're first starting out, it's a lot easier to do it this way. But if you've never had experience drawing, in fact, I had a student last period, first period, who said, I never thought I could draw, but you've changed my mind. From here on out, knowing how to do it is half the battle. The rest of it is just practice. And it's kind of one of my little pet peeves when people go, oh, you are so talented. It's like, you never saw the practice that I put in there. You know, how much I work on this. There's a ton of practice. So we're going to do all the water and everything a little bit later. For right now, we're just going to do the subject matter here. So now I'm just going to clean up anything if it's too big or whatever. Just going to clean up my edges. And now I'm ready to do some really dark edges. So I'm going to switch over to my 6B pencil. And I really want to increase my contrast. I want some dark shapes. His head is probably our area of emphasis and the most important place to be. And so I'm going to just take my pencil and I'm going to switch over to this mode because I'm going to grind it in. I really want to do some dark areas here. And any place that I see darkness, I'm just going to put that in. You can use these little, I just go back and forth. You can use circles or zigzags or whatever you want, but just put in the shapes of the darkness that you see. There's a little light edge along his nose. We can get that with our kneaded eraser. That contrast, the difference between dark and light, It's what's going to make your picture pop. It's what brings it out, makes it kind of stand out, creates a lot of interest. So any place that it's dark, just go ahead and put some of that in there. And if you think, oh, my shadow wasn't quite right, you can adjust it. You're just looking at the shapes of dark and light. In fact, you don't even care what it is. Shapes of dark and light. And, you think to yourself, well, where's his mouth? I don't know. It's just this little shape of dark and light. When you're done, it'll look that way. Now, I have to warn you, too, on something. We rarely get done with the piece of artwork that we do. Art takes time. But I'm going to try to pick out things that are fairly basic. I mean, this dolphin is fairly basic, so that we can get most of it done on the Fridays that we draw together. But we rarely get through it all. This is one of those things. The farther I get away from the head, the more relaxed I can be. It's like the head is so important, whether it's people or animals or whatever you're doing. That seems to be our area of emphasis. So the farther I get away, I kind of relax a little bit. I'm going to switch over to this way of drawing because it's faster. And pretty much all I'm worried about are the shapes of darkness that I can see in there. And if they're not perfect, that's quite okay. It's all about practice anyway, isn't it? Again, however you want to do your pencil strokes, whether they're in little circles or zigzags or back and forth, however you want to do it, totally up to you. The important thing is just getting the shapes of dark and light about where they go. As close as you can. So I'm just doing some little zigzags along his back, trying to leave out little areas because I can see where the water is kind of shiny up there. Not that my little shine spots are exactly in the right place, but nobody cares. I mean, water doesn't stay in the same place anyway, so. He's got quite a bit of reflected light on his underside there, so I'm just going to leave that kind of light. And the most important part here is pretty well done. You can blend this a little bit if you'd like and go back into it and darken it in. We're just layering in this graphite. The pencil lead, right? You guys know that pencil lead's called graphite. There's no lead in it. Never had lead in it. So now I'm just going to take my cotton swab and blend it a little bit. The more darkness that you pick up from your cotton swab, we're going to call that seasoning. We're going to season our cotton swab, get it kind of dark. You can kind of pick and choose where you put that, what you smooth and what you don't. There's some really light areas, like right along his nose, right where his mouth kind of comes up into it. His lower jaw is just a little bit further out than his upper part. So it creates a little shine right there. And look how smooth that gets. And if you leave some little light areas out, it creates that shiny kind of a look. And right around that little spot of white, I just don't want to leave that out. You can put a little bit everywhere else, but that little spot on his back, I'm going to leave that out. Last thing I'm going to do is just take my kneaded eraser and pull out any lighter areas, like there's one just above his eye, right where his eyebrow is, right there. Can't even see his eye. But there is a little bit of light right there. You can just touch your kneaded eraser to it. There's a little bit of light right on his nose, just a little bit right there. Maybe a little on his fin. Any of this little shiny areas that maybe we left out, just take your kneaded eraser and you can pinch it down to a little knife blade or a little point and just touch those little areas. You might have to pinch it down quite often. And now we're ready to do the water. And the water is so easy. Okay, so trust me on this one. I'm going to take my 6B pencil and I'm just looking where the water's kind of coming up through here, and there's some dark areas there. But the water itself, the splashy part, is very light. So I'm not going to draw it. I'm going to draw in between the light. So I'm just going to take my pencil and just put in some little spots like this. Just back and forth, little spots. And it's the negative spaces that I'm drawing that's creating the white part. And then his little reflection is in there. I'm going to put that in there, just back and forth, back and forth, a little reflection. You've got little thick and thin areas. You can skip little areas too if you want, if you think, oh, that's really light. Just skip it. Back and forth. And it doesn't have to be exactly like the, because the water changed. As soon as this picture was taken, it all changed. So as long as you're close, as long as you get the feeling. Back and forth. Make sure you get some thick and thin areas. Look at the reflection on the water. Get this nice, this is called a curvilinear or organic kind of a feel to it. Very rounded. Some are thin, some are thick. Just back and forth. Notice when I want to draw darker, I choke up on my pencil. And even if I'm drawing on the side of my pencil, I've choked up way up here, because that way I can draw a lot heavier. All this stuff in the background up here is never going to be as dark as what's in front of you. So the closer things get to you, the darker, the more contrast they have. So just put in as much as you feel like you need. And then just blend that all with your cotton swab. Start out with the dark areas. And then you can say to yourself, oh, well, I can see where it's not really dark, but it's kind of lighter right in there. You just draw in with your cotton swab. And it's going to make it nice and light and thin. You can even use your cotton swab up in the light, watery areas and just do little splashy kinds of looking shapes. It's the white, the negative space, it becomes the positive when you're talking about water. The last thing we'll do is we'll come back in with our kneaded eraser and pull out some of that light areas. Don't be afraid to leave little spots in between. Look at your scrap, look at your reference, and say, oh, I can see that shape. I'm just going to throw in that shape. And the cool thing about this is it doesn't have to be exact, because water changes. But it does have a texture, it does have a feel to it. Try to get that. And if you need more graphite, just go into some of the dark areas, smooth those out, and then you can come back in and do some of those little watery areas. What do you think? Was that the easiest dolphin you've ever drawn? Is that the only dolphin you've ever drawn? Yeah. Well, stick with it. There might be more in your future. The last thing you want to do to this is sign it. Pick out a good spot for your signature, not right on the edge. Don't get it too close to your subject matter. So for me, mine might be right down here on this side, or you could do it on this side. It's up to you where you want to put it. But just go ahead and sign it. And thanks for being here. Thanks for drawing with me. Hopefully your day will be a little bit nicer, a little bit better because you did draw. Because art makes life better. It just does.